Welcome on behalf of MC Squared to this informational Zoom about the PARCC math technology enhancements that are available to students as they take their PARCC assessment. What we've done is we've reviewed some of the results from PARCC and found that maybe that it wasn't so much the mathematical content that may have gotten in the way as much as maybe the technology or interacting with technology may have caused problems for students. So the very first place I'm going to go is take you to a document that is available to you. I'm going to scroll down so that you can see it. It has the different features as well as some items on the end for your students to get practice with the different features and the practice items and the release items where they can find the questions. I'm going straight to the Pearson website right up here. Okay, it looks like this. If you see there's some things across the top tab, I'm going to come here to where it says tutorials. And as I scroll down, I want you to notice here the equation editor. Here's where your students can get extra practice with the equation editor. There's a tutorial for the editor, and then there's practice. There's also some written handout that they can do. Right, so on these tutorials, there's a test nav tutorial, which will let you know about the features at the top of the test. So this tutorial will have some of the features that I'm going to showcase. So if you are doing this with your students, which is highly recommended that you do this with the whole class, then you can share with everyone the same kinds of features so that everyone gets the same information, and then take them to a lab and let them get some one-to-one time with this tutorial. All they'll need to do is just go here. Notice for mathematics, there are 4 different tutorials because each grade band has different features. There are some features in the 3 through 5 grade band that are not available on the 6, 7, and vice versa, or even the math or the high school. So each grade band has their own unique technology pieces. And if students have, they've been testing for several years now, if they've tested 3, 4, 5, and they're now 6th graders, and you think, well, they don't need this information. Well, they really do, because there's some new features that might apply to their grade band. There's even features that apply within the grade bands. So I'm going to come over here to the 3-5 grade band. All right, so here is the very first features of the test. There's the multiple choice and the multiple select features. Multiple choice has one answer, and I'd like you to note that they will click the answer. If they want to change their answer, they have to click on another dial. But once they select something and they want to change away from it, they've got to select a different dial. On the multiple select, the feature I'd like you to notice is that the answer dial is square as opposed to the answer dial on the multiple choice is circular. For elementary 3 through 5, the question will tell them how many they need to select. It'll say select 3, select 2, select 4. If you are a 6th grade or above teacher, it'll just say select all that apply. So you're not given that feature of narrowing it down to the number of choices. So for example, this one had select all that apply. We know that the answer dial is square, that it will state the number of correct answer choices. And it also is a feature where there could be multiple choice and multiple select in the same question. So that there might be an A and a B part, and the A part might be where they have to do multiple choice, and a B part might be multiple select, or there could even be multiple select and fill in the blank or other types of questions if there's an A, B, or even a CD part. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and click forward. Okay, most kids know that they can move back and forward with the keys up in the top. So unless they're a 3rd grade teachers probably should do the navigator or showcase these features for kids, because they're not going to know, because they've never had the test before. Okay, so here's a multiple choice question. I'm going to play up some of the features up here at the top. So for the multiple choice question, I can highlight, if I click the pointer, okay, and I can just scan it and highlight it, okay? Or I have the choice of highlighting text a different color, Maybe I want it blue. Just the answer there, blue. All right, so if I want to undo it, I just come across and hit that no bar, and it takes it away. I can only do that if that's activated. If some other feature is activated, I can't unhighlight. Okay, so another feature for this particular, like a multiple choice question, is that an answer eliminator. So I can come over here and I don't want to even consider A. I read it and it doesn't help me, so I can eliminate it. I can eliminate this choice. For some students, this is a distractor. For others, it may help them to narrow out what they're seeing. If you want to undo it, the X bar up here has to be gray, and then click it and it goes away. Okay, another feature up here across the top bar is the review bar. So for every question that I answer, this little yellow dial will go away. Okay. So at the very end, I would look to see how many questions are not complete and be able to go back to them. Okay, another feature is the bookmark. So maybe I've read the question, I'm not sure about it, I'm not sure about my answer. I hit bookmark and that question gets a tag. Okay, so the tag could be for whatever reason the student chooses to tag the item. Okay, the next kind of question here, okay, they get some practice with the multiple select, two choices here. They have two. Okay, and I was able to highlight because that is still dark. If that wasn't dark, I wouldn't be able to automatically highlight. So this particular question required a lot of reasoning for them to be able to reason which are and which are not choices. Okay, drag and drop features is pretty intuitive for students, especially students who are gamers. They know that all they need to do is just grab it and move it over and drop it, grab it and drop it. So again, that's a pretty intuitive feature. So in this one, they want 3 quadrilaterals. So if I pick my quadrilaterals and just drop them in there, I'm done with that question. I can move on. Okay, so here's the type of enhancement that kids have a lot of trouble with. They see these editor questions where they have to explain their reasoning, and they have a very difficult time with the manipulation, especially the lower grades that have not had a lot of word processing training. So for the very first editor, there's two different kinds of editors. There's a basic editor that only allows a student to enter math, numbers, and text. And then there's an open response editor that allows math, plus they can explain their reasoning with text. So in the basic editor, notice on both of these, they have the same features: an undo feature, a redo feature, which activates, allows them to, in case they've erased something, they can, instead of having to type it all again, they can just hit the redo feature. Okay, the trash can allows them to clear everything that they've written. A feature that I really want to be able to have you see is the fraction feature. So if I have to have that little bar activated, the little square activated, so I put 2/3 in here. Okay. Suppose that I'm writing an expression and I want 2/3 plus something. If I hit the plus key, the plus opens a little box in the denominator. I didn't want it in the denominator, and so I'm going to undo it. Okay, I still want that plus sign, but notice if I put it, it's going to be here. The only way to move it away from the denominator is to hit the right arrow key on your keyboard. So notice what happened when I hit it. The cursor moved to the center of my expression. So now I can hit plus. I know this is geared toward 3rd through 5th grade. Some elementary schools have 6th grade in their elementary. For 6th grade, if you have a square root symbol, the same thing will happen. If you have square root of 8 and you hit the plus sign, that plus sign is going to stay under the radical symbol. And again, you don't want it there. You press the right arrow key to get it out of there. It will also happen in exponents. If you put a value into an exponential space and hit the plus key, it's going to give you a plus in the exponential area. So I'm going to clear this and talk about the mixed number. Okay, so it activates an opportunity for me to enter a mixed number. So here's a 3, and I'm not going to activate the strike that one over. Okay, I'm going to say 3, and then I didn't say where I wanted the next number. So if I hit 6, notice it continues putting it into the space that I already was at. So if I want it in the little square, I have to activate the area of the little square. So let's say I have 4/5. Okay. If I now hit the plus sign will not come out as part of the denominator because I've done a mixed number, and in a mixed number, you know you want a numerator and a denominator. There wouldn't be any reason to have an operation symbol in the denominator. So I would just, it would just not activate. It would allow it to do a plus and then let you enter another value into that little square. Okay. In the open response area, if some questions are going to look like that. If students don't know that they can open the symbols by hitting they disappear or they reappear. Okay. If the question has them like this, students aren't going to know that they have them available unless they click there. Okay. So here they can answer 7, let's say plus 7 plus 2. Okay. And they can hit equals, where's the equal sign? Equals 9. And then they use the keyboard to continue with their answer. Okay, they can use any of these symbols, operators, less than, equal than, in their explanation. So this box is really for kids to be able to explain their reasoning and their solution as best they can. Oftentimes, students have a difficult time with that, so they should think about what they're going to say. Oftentimes, if we have students verbalizing, it helps them to be able to compose. I had showed you where that equation editor practice was, and they can get to it. And I put the website on that notes page. By going here to this tutorial space, they can get to that extra practice on the editor. They can also get extra practice on the editor by doing the practice questions for 2016. The practice questions have a few opportunities for them to actually practice the short and or the long version of the editor by actually doing practice questions. All right, so here's an opportunity for students to practice using this basic editor. So we have 6 backpacks and 3/4 of a yard, and how many? So that would be 18/4, which is what, 4.5. Okay, so if I put here, I can enter 4. I know I'm going to have to do a mixed number, so I could enter it like this, 4.5. So 4.5. If you didn't want to use a fraction, and the students may be using decimals, okay, they could also just put 4.5 right into the same space. And again, it says enter only your answer, and that will help them or remind them that no text is allowed. Again, more practice with the basic editor. Okay, the next feature is a fill in the blank space. So if in this fill in the blank space, if the question has a negative sign in the answer, a negative sign will be allowed as an input value. I'm going to hit the negative sign now, and notice it says invalid input. A negative sign would not be a valid piece of this answer, so it tells me invalid answer. You can never enter fractions into this space, into a fill in the blank. So if I wanted 2/3 and I hit the fraction bar, it tells me that it's an invalid input. So I cannot enter fractions into a fill in the blank space. Okay, so here's a volume question where they're going to answer in this space. Now, what I would like to call your attention to is in the 5th grade test, I believe it was, there was a question that was on the operational test, I believe it was question 39, where many kids in many schools that I worked with missed the question, and the teachers were shocked because they said, well, my kids know how to do volume. Well, what turned out in the samples was that they were not doing 1 cubic unit. So right here we have 3, 4, 5 times 3 is 15, times 2 would have been 30. I would have put 30 in here. Okay, but what if the units were half unit? Each square was a half a unit, or each square was a quarter unit. So sometimes there's a key out here that says each cube is a quarter unit or a half a unit. And I think that maybe that might have been why the kids answered the question using their knowledge of volume without considering what the key was telling them, that it was not a 1 unit square, it was a quarter unit square or whatever. So that's just a thought on my part, that that might have been why that so many kids missed that particular question. All right, the next feature is a hotspot. Right now we see a number line. If your students don't know that they can actually put an answer on that number line, if they don't know, they're not going to do it. So here's 5/3. So if I come over here and I enter 3, 4, 5/3, if I click on 5/3, I can enter a response. Okay, if I want to change my response, I can move it any place I want. This is called a hotspot. And if they don't know that they can actually put an answer on that bar, they may have left the answer blank because they didn't know to activate it. Okay, so here's practice with a hotspot, where this time they give you a lot of different values. So sometimes they just give you the number line and you have to interact with just a blank number line. In this case, kids may notice, well, there's a lot of things there. If I just click it, maybe, you know, click to put it on there and click to undo it. So this one, if they give them this little blue squares, that might help them to know what to do. But if it's blank, they may not know what to do. All right, so I'm going to give you some other hotspot. So on the 3rd grade test, here's an opportunity to do a hotspot question where they have to click on the arrow. It's 3rd grade, Unit 1, practice question 3. Here's the same one that we just did. Okay, here's a hotspot question where they have to activate the number of squares to make the array for whatever they're doing. So if they click the square, it turns dark. If they click too many, maybe they click a whole row too many or column too many, then to undo it, they just click it again, and that particular square will turn back to the original color. Okay, in the grade 5 release question number 5, it's a multiple select, but there's rectangular regions that are blue, and all they need to do is go in, and I'm not active now, but if you click there, it would have turned that space or that rectangular region a dark color. So it's a hotspot of a multiple select item. Okay, back to the test here. All right, so here's inline choice items. I think most of us call them drop-down menus. So in this case, students pick, choices. If there are 2 drop-down menus and students only answer 1 drop-down menu, the question is not scored. It receives a score of 0. If there's 2 of them, they should answer both. If they only know the answer for one, they should probably guess on the other, because if this question were worth 2 points, at least they might get 1 point for a score as opposed to 0 by not answering both drop-down areas. Okay, so this one had 3 drop-downs. Sometimes, in this case, all 3 drop-downs have the same choice of selections. Oftentimes, they do not. So again, students will have had to have answered all 3 in order for the question to be scored. The coordinate plane items are similar to hotspots, only they're a special hotspot. So if I want to activate the dot that I am going to, or the point that I'm going to put here, I have had to have activated it on the left bar. So point B was 7272. I click it and I've activated point B. If I want to put point A in, I have to activate the blue area for point A, which was 34. Okay, if I want to take it off, I have to be in this activated area, 34. Okay, point C was 38. Okay, so I was putting 38, but I put it with the point A, so I need to put it with the point C, 38. Okay, now I'm going to need to go back and put my 34 back in. So the colors here are going to correspond with the colors of the points that you select. So again, kids need to know how to put it on and also how to take it off in case they change their reasoning as to why it shouldn't be where it was. Okay, so here's some practice with that particular feature. Point A, whatever the values were, point B, etc. They have a little bit of practice. Okay, so before I go on, I'm going to come over here. So in the 3rd grade test, you can click on the ruler, okay? The ruler will be a 1/4 inch ruler. In the 5th and the 6th grade test, the ruler will be a 1/8 inch ruler. Okay, so if the orientation that you're measuring is vertical, they can move the ruler to the appropriate orientation. On the 4th and 5th grade test, they will also have a protractor up here. The protractor feature is exactly the same. They grab it and move it around. They can orient it if the angle that they're measuring is not part of the specific base of the angle. If they need to orient it to get to the measuring the angle, they can do that by grabbing the circles and manipulating it to the orientation they need. Okay, so if I want it to disappear, I click it and it's gone. Right, so the other feature that I'd like to talk to you about is this little profile person over here. Okay, it will open up and I'll do the magnifier first. So the magnifier, it's not very big, but if a student has visual problems, they can activate a box that will magnify what they're seeing. Unfortunately, for example, if you teach the 6th grade and you have the calculator feature, the buttons on the calculator are very small, but you cannot use the magnifier over the calculator. It doesn't magnify the calculator. Okay, another feature here, I'm unable that one. Okay, another feature, and I'm going to go way back to the very beginning, scroll all the way back to question number 1. Okay, I'd like to show the masking. Okay, so this is another way to eliminate answers. So if they mask everything, they can open to see one question at a time. If they need to focus, one question at a time. If they decide that that's not a question, they can eliminate the choice. So they can use it as an eliminator, or they can also use it as a feature to focus their answers. So to enable it or disable it, all they need to do is come over here. Disable it. Okay, another feature is the show line masquerader. This is probably most used for language arts. So if you notice, I can stretch that. I'm going to, as I move this down, I can read one line at a time. Okay, and again, most probably best used for language arts, but if the student needs the focus of the reading, they can enable that feature. So I'm going to disable by Masquerader. A couple of the other ones that change the background. And this is one that students, when they go to practice, they like to do this. Okay, so they could change the whole background. If they need the contrast, if they have some visual problems, they can change the contrast to all dark background with white lettering, or purple background, black on white default. Okay, so when they go to practice on the tutorial, they can change colors, and a lot of kids like to see what's available there. But on the test itself, it might be a feature that you maybe share only specifically with a kid who needs that feature. Maybe a student has depth perception problems and needs that white on black or a different kind of perception. Another item on this dropdown is sign out of test nav. If kids don't even know that they can sign out, that's probably better. If they sign out, that they'll invalidate their test. So you may not want them to get to that feature. Okay, I have the drawing box. So only on the elementary questions, and it will only open if the question might be enhanced by this particular technology. It's called a drawing item. In addition to the explanation of the editor, a drawing box might pop up. So a drawing box will allow them to use the drawing feature to help explain their reasoning. It has a pencil feature, an erase. It allows them to change the color of what they're drawing about. Different circles to indicate just placeholders maybe. It has an undo button, it has a redo button, and it has a clear button. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next one where we actually get to use it. Okay, so this one, there's 19 people and there are going to be 3 tables. They do not have to use the drawing box if they don't want to, but if it helps them to explain their reasoning. So in this case, I know that 6 people can fit at a table. Okay, I'm going to activate some big dots. And I know 6 people can sit at a table, so I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. So now if I've counted them, I've got 18 people sitting at 3 tables and I've got 19 people. So this might help explain your reasoning up here that no 19 people can't fit at 3 tables with 6 per table. So if the drawing box helps the student to explain their reasoning by drawing a picture, they can also draw a picture by using the pencil tool or pen tool, whatever you want to call it. If that helps them to actually draw a picture, do they have to use the drawing box? No. If it helps them to explain their reasoning, then use it. Where can students get practice using this drawing box? The only place that I have seen this drawing box practice is right here on this particular tutorial space. I have not seen it in the practice questions. I have not seen it in the release items. So if you want them to have practice, you'll need to come to this tutorial space and let them practice in this area. So I'm at the end of my test. I haven't hit submit yet, but my next recommendation would be to make sure kids hit review and look down. It tells me down here, I had 22 questions in this section. For 3, 4, and 5, there are 4 sections of the test. On the grade 6, there are 3 sections. So it tells you how many questions you had. Of these 22 questions, I didn't answer 8 questions. So before I hit submit, I might want to go back and make sure that I've answered all 8 questions. I bookmarked 1 item, so I might want to go back up here and see, why did I bookmark question 3? So I can go back to question 3 and see why I might have bookmarked it. Maybe I wasn't sure of the answer. Maybe I just wanted to check the work. But again, you can manipulate to any question. Question 10 I didn't answer, so I can go straight to question 10 without hitting these back and forth buttons to get to the question that they may not have answered. So this is a very nice, quick feature to get them to where they need to be without hitting that back button. In addition to that tutorial information, there are a couple of others. In the 3rd grade, there's a drag and drop feature. Since 3rd graders have never taken the test before, many times kids will think, well, I just drag it and drop it. But in this case, they need to drag it and drop it to indicate all of these leaf lengths. So they would have had to drag this and dropped it and dragged it again and dropped it and dragged it again and dropped it. So something that isn't real intuitive, that they get an opportunity to drag and drop more than one time. In the 4th and the 5th grade test, there's a question that looks like this. The original question was blank like this. When they hit more, it will give them a line. If they hit more again, it would divide it into thirds. If they hit more again, it would divide it into fourths or fifths or sixths or how many ever. Then it asks them to shade to the appropriate value that's being asked for. In this case, 1/6. So I have 6 circles. I need to shade 1/6. So again, it becomes a hotspot. You just click it and it shades it automatically. If I needed to shade a half and I had this and I just click there and it would shade a half. So again, this particular question is not featured in the tutorial, but it is a question that did appear on grade 3 unit 1 practice test, and it also appeared on the grade 4 release test. So another feature that may come up in the grade 4 but might come up in other test questions is students have to know if they see this little bar here, it's a slider, and they need to know that by moving it back and forth, they get more text or less text. Again, if they've done the language arts PARCC test, they may be more aware that there's a slider feature. It's kind of just the same thing as the slider on your computer. Another test item that is not in the tutorial is called a matrix. So in this case, your students need to know the difference between rows and columns. Some questions will specifically say, show one cell per row. So they need to know that they're going to have one answer here and one answer here and one answer here. Some questions will ask them to select items in each column. So they need to know that they're going to have one item selected this way in the column and one item selected in this column. So For this particular question, they have two things that they have to interact with. It appears to have at least two parallel sides and has at least two perpendicular sides. So this would be, both of these would be activated because it does have two perpendicular sides and it does have parallel sides. So both of these. In this case, there's only one perpendicular, so it would not be toggled there, and it has no parallel, so it would not be. So this, neither of these would be selected. So they are not selecting one per row. They are selecting to meet the criteria at the top of the matrix. In this one, they are going to select one in each row because all they're going to say is whether this is less than 7/10 or greater than 7/10. So again, they have to be very careful to answer the question that's being asked. So for the 5th grade test, there might be a little square out to the side that says exhibit. If they click on that exhibit, this is what they're going to get, the assessment reference sheet. This assessment reference sheet you could be using in class right now, okay, to get kids used to where to find conversions or where to find the formula for PRISM. It is or probably will be shared by your test coordinator in hard copy form, but in the event that a kid needs it and doesn't have it, they can hit that little exhibit button and it will only appear when it's needed. This assessment reference sheet will pop up, something that you should be probably using with your students right now. I'm going to go back here to the notes page. Okay, the calculators in grades 3 through 5, no calculator is allowed unless the IEP specifically has been put into place for a special needs student. Now, the only calculator that they can use if it is allowed on their IEP is a for function with a square root and a percentage function. They can't use a graphing or anything else like that. It's just a basic calculator. Kids need to know that they move back and forth with the keys up in the top left corner. They need to be reminded that they can review questions, they can bookmark or tag questions. The pointer will allow them to move around like a cursor and also allows them to highlight or unhighlight in two colors, blue and pink. Okay, the ruler, again, for grade 3, 1/4 inch. For grade 4 and 5, 1/8 inch, and 4 and 5 will also have a centimeter ruler. For grade 4 and 5, they'll also have the protractor that looks like that. Again, you can orient it by moving it, grab it on the circle and it'll spin. The Answer Eliminator can X things out. Again, a feature that might distract for some students. Okay, in that top right corner here are the items that are featured so that you know what's up there. Okay, so here are the different features. Multiple choice, not much on. Multiple select, that kids should know it's a square. Okay, drag and drop, pretty intuitive. The basic editor, the features look like this. Might be a teachable moment. If kids need to know what a less than symbol is used for, what it means, greater than, this is parentheses, brackets, a $sign. In the open response, they need to know that if they click that math symbol, this disappears. If they click it again, it reappears. So again, there's a degree symbol. If they have a question where they are writing an equation and there's no place for a box, they could put the question mark in. Okay. Here again explains the features of the fraction positions on an equation editor. Okay, to get to the tutorial, there's a link, fill in the box. They cannot put fractions in there. They can put a negative sign if the question had a negative sign in it. If not, it'll be an invalid feature. Lots of different kinds of hotspots, drop-down menus, the coordinate plane or the point, the drawing items to explain their reasoning. Again, at the end, make sure that you have them review. The matrix questions are not in the tutorial, nor is this combo circle question. All right, the next area is opportunities for your students to have practice. So if you go to this link, it'll take you to the 2016 practice items, which are interactive. Kids can have drop-down menus, they can have drag and drops. On the release items, they're static. Okay, all they're doing is showcasing the question. They cannot manipulate them. They can only manipulate in the practice items and in the tutorials. There are 2015 and 2016 release items available, and that website will take you to a search engine, and you just put in whatever you want to look at. In the release items, there are also language arts release items. So the practice test questions, since they are interactive, they are available for this school year. the ones from 2015, the practice questions, they're removed from the PARCC website, but they are still available on the MC Squared website because we took each question last year and screenshotted it and put it one question per page to allow teachers to use the thinking protocol. And the thinking protocol was where kids answer the question alone, they work with a buddy and share their answers, and then they have a discussion whole group. So in order to be able to do that easily with one question and not too much distraction, we formatted them one question per page. And this is the pathway to get to that area. Okay, so now here are by grade level places where kids can practice, get interactive items for multiple choice. Or all of these are release items, meaning they are static. Okay, opportunities for multiple select, drag and drop questions. In 5th grade, there were no release questions for drag and drop, but there were at least 3 practice questions that are interactive that kids can practice drag and drop. For the equation editor, there are quite a few opportunities for interactive practice. There's 2 static questions, and the static questions, remember, are just the question without being able to manipulate an answer. Okay, open response, quite a number of open response practice questions and release questions. Keeping in mind that the release questions were actually given to kids as test questions last spring. Lots of fill-in-the-blank questions, probably the most samples were fill-in-the-blank. Hotspot questions. For 5th grade, there was only 1 hotspot question on a release item. There were none for the practice items. Drop-down menus, quite a few practice for 5th grade. And the release items, there were 3 in 4th grade and 1 in 5th grade. The coordinate graph items are the special hotspots that they just graph a point. There's 2 questions at this grade level, grade 5, where they can get practice. So a couple of opportunities in grade 4 to get matrix questions. Now, if you don't have questions at your grade level, it would be totally appropriate to go to the grade level below to have kids practice on that particular manipulation. So anchor papers are released items showing student work for items that were actually test items last year. And it shows the question, it shows the rubric, it will show all the answers and how this kid scored so that you can use them as exemplars for your own teaching practice to enhance how you may show students how to answer, or even as an exemplar for students to see how other students answered and how many points they got. Okay, here's the space where they can get the release items. You come over here and hit PARCC release items here, and it will take them to an area where they can search. Put the year and the grade level and the subject math and a search bar. Okay, this is the anchor papers for grade 4. Okay, so if I come over here, it will show what the question was at the very top. Okay, so here's the question. It was worth 3 points. Here's how the points are distributed. And then there's several student papers showing this particular student got 3 points. Okay, as I scroll down, I'm going to scroll all the way down, all the ways here. And there's this student answered this way, and remember, it was worth 3 points. This student received 1 point. So you could use it as an exemplar or as an explanation for teachers to see how students are answering and how the question was scored for that particular question. And there are not very many. There's maybe 3 to 5 for each grade level, and they are from last spring's test. So we know that they are actual test questions that are being released for teachers to use as instructional pieces. So at the same area where we got the tutorials, okay, if I go across this top bar, says test prep, okay? If I come to practice tests and I click on it, I get this area here, which will give me all the practice questions for each grade level. In grade 3, 4, and 5, there are 4 actual test sessions. In grade 6, there are 3. A way that you might be able to use this is to make an answer sheet and have kids answer on the computer, but they also answer on your answer sheet, each section. And then here's an answer key for all the computer-based sections. So it'll tell you Unit 1, and here's the answers for the questions that were given in Unit 1. So that's one way to have them actually do the practice test and actually see whether they're getting the answers correct or not. For you to see whether they're getting them and for the student to see whether they're getting them correct. There's grade 4, grade 5, etc. So you would click here and get to your appropriate grade level practice questions. I think that's all I had. Alrighty, thank you.